Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go! Good morning, my friends and fellow elite achievers. Welcome to Modern Leadership, the podcast where each week we are sitting down with authors, entrepreneurs, and leaders to explore their journey. We dive into the ups, their downs, and ultimately the lessons they learned along the way. Our goal, of course, is to show that everything is figure-outable. Today's guest expert is Duane Brown. Duane has been called an international man of mystery, a digital nomad by his friends. He's lived in 6 cities across 3 continents, visited 40 countries around the world, and he uses his curiosity for people and love for people watching to run better marketing campaigns for clients. He is the founder and head of strategy at Take Some Risk, and today he is our Modern Leadership guest expert. Duane, so good to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is a lot of international man of mystery and digital nomad and founder of a company. Give us a little background. What did we miss by way of intro? Who is Duane Brown?
Yeah, I'm Canadian. So for those who might not be listening from Canada and somewhere else in the world, but sometimes some people say my accent sounds American, or sometimes I put on a British accent because I lived in London, England for a couple years.
You know, it's interesting. I thought that your voice sounded a lot like Malcolm Gladwell, who's also Canadian. So that's interesting you would say that.
Yeah, he is also Canadian. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard him speak in person, but I've read a good chunk of his books, and I do enjoy his books, even if some people would, say not all of his books are factual or correct, if you will.
Well, if those people are saying that, they're not listening to our podcast. We love Malcolm Gladwell around here. And if you read his books, you got to pick up the audio version. Listen to him. He reads all his books himself. He's got a great voice. You sound a lot like him. But anyway, we got off on a tangent. Canadian, what's next?
Yeah, and then I love to travel. That's, I think, really who I am. I don't really define myself by my job and my career. I think those things are really important. But I love food. I love to cook. My friends would probably say I'm a foodie, and I love to travel, and that's who I am in a nutshell. I just happen to be really good at marketing, really good at trying to understand people and relate to people. And that's a big part of why I love to travel. Is it's great to see other cultures in different places. Like going to Asia on my own for 10 weeks was very eye-opening because it's, you're seeing different parts of Southeast and East and North Asia, and it is everything you'd see on TV, in North America, but then it's everything you didn't expect at the same time, and it's just a very fascinating place to try to understand people and culture and their history and eat food you've never seen and never had before, but that is what the local culture or country eats. So I'm definitely a traveler, food person first, and I just happen to be really good at marketing, and I love what I do, and I love helping our clients do it.
From a business leader perspective, from a founder and running of a company, how does travel and this desire to get out and see the world, experience different cultures, how does that impact not just for you as a business owner, but for the listeners of the podcast who are business owners themselves? What impact does travel and curiosity have on leadership?
It definitely makes you a more, empathetic person in the sense that you can try to understand people a little bit easier. I'm a gay guy, so I've dated guys from all around Ontario. For those who don't know, Ontario is New York State. It's like a state in America. The only difference, we just call them provinces in Canada. And so I've dated lots of guys who live in smaller cities or smaller towns, right? And if you've ever lived in a small city or small town, you sometimes know that you can get a bit of tunnel vision if you've never left that small city or small town, because that's all you know. But when you travel and go other places, you get that other perspective you wouldn't have necessarily gotten, and that's super valuable in business, whether you're trying to negotiate a deal with someone and you're trying to understand their perspective, or you're trying to sell a product that you have no idea how to sell because you don't use it. We have a client that does and sells dirt bikes and mountain bikes, and they're not cheap. I mean, they're $3,000-$4,000 for a full mountain bike. And so trying to understand the mindset of someone who would, ride dirt bikes in the Pacific Northwest, or we have a client that sells bamboo pajamas, so trying to understand why would a woman, buy these pajamas. And even just going to an event the other day and talking to different women and find out why they buy made me a lot more empathetic and made me understand, okay, these are the keywords they need to bid on, or these are what we should say in our ad copy so that it's more relatable to those people. And so travel just makes you and opens your eyes to what's possible out there, and you don't sort of get that tunnel vision. And quite frankly, you get to eat some really good food when you travel, because at least in Canada, alcohol is really expensive. So when you travel to other countries where it's a lot cheaper because it's not taxed as high, you can have a really good time.
As we think about this, you're talking about why people buy. And what if we're not able to get out and travel? What if we're not able to, experience the different cultures? How can we as business leaders kind of develop this ability to offset the tunnel vision that may be naturally created by being in our local small community? What are some of the things that we can do as leaders to overcome that if we aren't able to take 10 weeks in Asia or do quite the traveling that you and I like to do so much?
Yeah, I think that there's lots of ways you can do it. The first one I think is a bit of a challenge, but spending more time on the internet. If your customers, are parents and you're not a parent or you don't have kids, or there are parenting forums and things you can go and read. Reddit, for its good and bad, is a great place to go understand different communities. There's a Reddit subthread for anything and everything you can think of. And so whether it's, getting financial help or understanding, how people design their bedrooms or, there's a whole thread for what I do for a living. So I think just looking on the internet and finding ways to find genuine communities of people you want to understand or get to know better or find out their perspective. Obviously, the internet's not perfect. We always hear the negative about, you can go down the rabbit hole that is YouTube, and it can take you down a hole you don't want to go down and stuff. But the internet's a great way to try to understand other people if you come with an open mind. And then the other one is talk to people. If you've got friends of friends and there's someone you've always wanted to talk to, but they were very different from you, go for coffee. Or if they're living the other side of the country, do a Skype or a Zoom or Google Hangout and just talk to people. And most people are friendly and open-minded and are willing to share and talk if you're genuine about it.
Yeah, and a lot of the listeners of this podcast know that I use this podcast kind of as my way of sitting down and having coffee with leaders across the world, right? It's not easy for Duane and I to get together in Ontario or in Montreal or in Phoenix, Arizona, or wherever we may be, but we can jump on Skype and we can have these conversations and ask these questions. So Duane, at this point, I want to take you back a little bit and talk about your younger formative years and say, okay, at one point you decided I got to go and do something on my own. It's going to be marketing. I'm going to run this business. Take us back to that decision point, whether it was, younger or mid-age. When did you decide to open up, take some risk, and how did you come up with the idea that this is what was needed?
Yeah, so before I started this company 3 years ago, I freelanced a lot when I lived in Toronto and before I moved abroad. And even when I moved abroad, I freelanced. And I had a company back then because, it was during the recession and, being in my 30s, we've had a couple of recessions now, but it was hard to find a job. And so, freelancing and having my own little business just made sense. I could work for 2 or 3 different agencies on contract or freelance and then make enough money to survive because everyone of my generation more or less was just trying to survive the whole 2008 fallout with housing and people not hiring as much. Part of the whole reason I went to travel around the world is because I wanted to get more international experience, and I wasn't really getting that in Canada because Canada, the challenge is in America, there's lots of head offices for companies, and they don't necessarily open an office in Canada because we're just across the border, obviously, and so there's not always opportunities to do things that are, across America or around the world because companies will often open an office in Europe or open an office in Australia if they want to do APAC or do Europe. And so really back then it was all about surviving and getting enough experience so I could pay the bills. But 3 years ago I realized, I've been doing this for 10, 11 years. I've got really great experience. I've lived around the world. I hated my job. It wasn't really that great. I didn't want to just come in and make a company another million, another 2 million. It didn't really make sense. And so I just decided if I could make enough money to pay all my bills, equal the current salary I have, and get the opportunity to travel more, why not do it? And also get to work with some really cool clients. So I gave my notice and quit my job after thinking about it over the holidays. And in Jan 2017, I bought a domain name, set up emails, incorporated a company, got a bank account, and then just started it all because I always knew I could get a job somewhere else. Getting a job in Canada isn't that hard at this point in my career because I've got great experience. Shopify has approached me 3 different times asking if I want to come. TELUS, which is a big telecom in Canada, has approached me. Best Buy Canada has approached me a couple of times, and I always just told them, I don't really want to work for you. I don't really want to make a big corporation more money. You make $5 million versus $2 million because I've come in and help you, but my salary doesn't change whatsoever. That unit economics doesn't work.
Talk to me a little bit about that mindset, because I think that there's a lot of people that have a similar mindset. And it's not the fact that they don't want to help companies grow and they don't want to impact more people and have, a bigger footprint as far as impact and service and these type of things. But this mindset of saying, I also want to benefit from the increase in revenue of the company that I work for. And I think that some of our larger companies, maybe they understand this on an intellectual level, but because of their philosophy or because of, what they're trying to do, they're not providing these opportunities for their employees. Talk to us about this mindset of growing for yourself and taking control of your leadership development.
Sure, yeah, totally. So, I looked at what I did in my last job, and, we went from, not really running any paid ads and not bringing in tons of revenue to a $2 million business, just running campaigns in 200 countries. And I realized, yes, I'll get, maybe a 3% increase in raise or 4% increase, whatever the percentage is, but I will guarantee you we make the company another 20, 30% more money in the next 6 months. But my salary won't increase with that. There won't be like a bonus because bonuses don't really happen. I probably won't get promoted because it's paid ads, so we don't need a huge team of 20 people. We might need a couple people, but there's, especially when I think you work inside of a corporation, there's lots of demand, right? Marketing wants to hire people, and engineering wants to hire people, or sales wants to hire people, or whatever the big departments are. And so sure, we give Duane, 40, 50, 60 grand to hire someone, but then that means we can't hire in sales or engineering. And so there's this a tug of war within companies about who gets what resources to hire. And I think a lot of times companies just figure people will just stay in a job because they want that comfortability. They're not going to risk going out on their own or doing their own thing because, they're afraid they won't be able to get a job, or they just get really comfortable. I think we all get really comfortable with having that stable job and stable income. But I always tell friends, a company wants you to stay in your job because it's easier to keep you than have to go and find a new person, but they will fire you tomorrow if the numbers don't work out and they need to save money. So I think people need to realize that no job, even in-house somewhere, is not secure. You were fireable tomorrow, regardless of what your job is, and that includes me myself. They could have fired me tomorrow if they really had to because of numbers just didn't make sense to keep Duane and 20 other people in marketing.
So how has your mindset switched since founding your own company? Because now you're an employer, right? And now you're kind of sitting on the other side of the table, making these decisions. And you obviously recognize that resources are limited and you've got to stretch your resources as far as you can. Obviously, you want to take some home. You want to provide for yourself, but you also need to infuse money back into the company to grow it. Now that you're on the other side of the table, how has your mindset or philosophy shifted in this regard?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So after I did all that thinking and, I went on my own, and we've always done well because we're still in business. So one thing we've done, even though as people and some books I've read, we're not motivated by money, and I agree I'm not motivated by money, but I want to be compensated if I'm doing an amazing job, and I keep on doing an amazing job. So we have profit sharing at the company. So it basically looks at 25% of the total amount of the profit share is based on just how long you've been at the company. I think tenure is an important thing. I don't think it's the only reason someone should get a job or a promotion or a raise and stuff like that. So let's say we were going to do a $10,000 pot of profit share. 25% of that goes towards based on how long you've been at the company. And the other 75% is based on a weighted scale of, 0 to 4, 0 being we should have fired you because you're doing a really bad job, and 4, you're hitting out of the park and we should have promoted you long ago. And every 3 months, we kind of look at, how's the last quarter been, what's good, what's bad, what can we improve, how can we help things out, and then we give you a score. We do it again in another 3 months, and then at the end of 6 months, we divide those two numbers together by 2, and based on, my score and everyone else's score, we divvy up the other 75%, and that's your bonus for that quarter. So a 2 is basically you're doing your job. A 3 is you've stepped up and you've come up with an idea to save money or save time or a new division at the company or a new service offering. And so I really work hard to reward people for both sticking around if they enjoy it. And I always tell people if you hate something, tell me, or you think something could be better. But I also reward people for going beyond their job and stepping up and coming up with an idea to save money or save time or whatever it is they come up with just to make the company better as a whole, because I'm not going to come up with all the great ideas. I'm a smart guy. I love myself, but I'm also not going to come up with everything. So I'm on the other side of the table, but I work hard to reward people for stepping up. And I try to reward the behavior that I want to see in people.
And you packed a lot in there, and so I want to slow you down a little bit and ask you a few questions from that. One is, who does the evaluation, like from 0 to 4? Does the employee participate in evaluating themselves? Do their colleagues, do the people that work for them, or is it just their immediate supervisor that does the evaluation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's all of the above. So each person will do their own evaluation. And so I always ask people, what do you think you get for the last quarter? Because I want to find out their opinion, their point of view, what they think they did well, what they didn't do well. And I've already graded them based on my personal experience from my point of view. And then, if we both say the same number, then that's the number they get. If we have a difference of mine is too high or too low, we'll meet somewhere in the middle and come to some agreement. And then that's their quarter. And that's the reason why we do it every 3 months is because if you've had a bad quarter, we all have bad quarters, there's a death in the family, you got really sick, you had to take some time off, you still have another quarter to ramp back up and increase your score. So it's definitely not just me grading someone or them grading themselves. It's everyone grading that person and trying to give them the best feedback possible.
All right, talk to me about the name of your company, because I love this name, Take Some Risk. Tell us about how you came up with that name and what it means, how it empowers and inspires your team.
Yeah, totally. I wanted a name that said who I was, and I've taken a lot of risks to get here. Grammatically correct people always tell me, Duane, it's take a risk. And I'm like, that's true, but you'd only take one risk. And in life, you've got to take lots of risks to get somewhere. It was risky for me to move to Australia or the UK without a job and just a visa and know no one. Each of those risks were worked out in the end, thankfully. It's risky going traveling in Asia by yourself for 10 weeks without, a job should something happen to you or whatever. So I wanted a name that sort of said who I was as a person, because I often tell clients, I've never skydived, but if I was in a plane, I was going to skydive, I hope you'd take my hand and jump out the plane with me and hope that we survive. And that's how I treat marketing. We have to do things differently than how you've done things in the past. If you've got, $1 million, $2, $3 million company, that is super, super amazing. But to get you to 5 or 10 million is probably not the same stuff that got you to 1, 2, and 3 million. There's some things we're going to keep, obviously, but we have to try and test new things and get outside of our comfort zone. And a big thing for 2020 with a lot of clients and advertising is, just better creative, better images, better ad copy. So I picked a name that said what I wanted clients to do, which is take some risk. It says who I am as a person. And most people love the name. I don't think I've had anyone say they hate it, but I think if somebody hated the name, they probably wouldn't tell me.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about marketing. Marketing should cause your customers or the people who see it to run. They either should run to you or they should run from you. So hopefully those who see take some risk and are turned off by it are already running the other way. You don't want them as your client anyway. I look at it, and as your publicist, as your PR rep reached out to me to get you on this show, Take Some Risk was actually something that resonated with me. It's something that I really am inspired by when it comes to this podcast. As you know, we talk a lot about figure-outable, and figure-outable means stepping outside of your comfort zone. It means doing things that you don't already have a solution, you don't already have an answer for, but you're going to go and figure it out. And so when we look at taking some risk, we really see that as an inspirational mantra for us to go out and do more. So Take Some Risk. It's a digital marketing company. You do a lot of marketing. You do a lot of identifying why people buy, who the purchasers are, how to communicate with them. And so while we have a marketing expert on the podcast, I want to pepper you with some questions about marketing. And the first one, this is a tough question, but it's one that I ask all marketers on this show, and that is, what's the next wave in marketing? What should we be preparing for today so that we're out in front? So whatever it may be, video or whatever, in the future, we're already set up to be successful. What's the next wave in marketing?
The big thing in 2020 and even in the next couple of years is better creative. It sounds like a weird thing to say, but whether you're running ads on Facebook and you've got images, video, or ad copy, or you're doing stuff on Pinterest with images or Google and Microsoft with text, just having better ad copy and especially better images for visual platforms like Instagram and Facebook is really the next best thing. The technology on a lot of these platforms are pretty mature, and they're, artificial intelligence and machine learning is pretty mature and has gotten to the point where the difference between company A, your company, and company B, your competitor, is who has better creative, who has better images, who has better ad copy. And even though those things cost money to produce, you do not want to go cheap on them. You want to invest in them because they're literally what people determine if they're going to buy from you or not. If people see an image and they don't like it, they're not going to buy. If they see a video that they think is really poorly done, they're not going to buy. If they see ad copy, much like my company name, that doesn't resonate with them, they're going to run away from you like there's no tomorrow. So if you want to win in 2020, and especially take market share, if a recession happens, make sure you've got the best creative possible, and you will outdo your competitors.
So we're a lot of service-based companies on this podcast, a lot of lawyers, doctors, dentists, real estate agents, those who run their own offices, small offices, but mostly in the service-based industry, not a lot of physical products for sale. So what do you recommend for us as service-based professionals for online marketing? Where should we put our attention and intention to increase our, the eyeballs that are seeing what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think for a lot of local-based or service-based companies, if you're real estate or doctor law, you're going to service a certain area,
sure, geographical constraint.
Yeah, totally. So I would look at SEO or search engine optimization. I think is a great way to put effort into it. Making sure you've got like a Google My Business listing. Make sure that Google My Business listing has great images on it. And then even when you run ads, because even if you're just in a local area, you can still run ads on Facebook and Instagram, making sure you still have the best images possible. You want someone that maybe is a current customer and they're saying how amazing your dentistry was or how you were a great real estate agent to work with to sell their house. So all the stuff I said still applies even if you're a local-based business. You just have to remember, do the best you can and put your best foot forward. Most new phones in the last couple of years take amazing pictures, all things being equal. So not that there's no excuse, but there's no reason why you couldn't take a good picture on your latest iPhone or Android and use that for an ad on Facebook as long as it's genuine and, relates to your brand.
Now, you were talking a little bit about Google My Business, and you were talking about images, and you used this word good images. Talk to us about what Google My Business is looking for. How do they define good images and how it's going to increase our ranking on especially the maps?
Yeah, so the images don't necessarily increase your ranking on the map, but the images are what people see when they do a search for something, right? So you want an image that's going to pop out versus other people's images. And a good image to me is one that's relates to your brand. It's very genuine. You can easily tell what it is. Sometimes you'll Google something and the image is blurry or you can't tell what the company is or what they do. So just making sure it's an image that's crisp and clear. So if someone goes to Google Maps and they Google local real estate agent, local dentist, and you pop up, that first image they see is one they can understand what that image is about and they want to click on it, right? So if you service, let's say you're a dentist and your foray is like families because you're like, oh, wow, if I get the parents and I get the kids, I've got a huge business, then make sure that first image you upload is like of a family, and the kids and stuff, because that will help you would draw other parents, whether it's a single dad or a family with two parents in, and have them come to your practice versus your competitor down the street.
Now, when you say the first image that you upload, let's say that we have a bunch of images. Is there a way to reorder them so that something you took today can get out in front of something that I took, 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago?
Yeah, so when you upload it to Google My Business, you can usually pick a cover image. So that's the image that the first one will show up. So make sure you just pick one that you want to show up first. And then the other images you upload will just appear after that.
Okay, so one of the things that you recommended is going out and getting good copy. How should we do that? Is that something that we DIY? Is it something that we pay for? How do we, because there's so many, I don't know about you because you're in the digital marketing space, but a lot of the listeners here, like myself, are getting a ton of inquiries almost on a daily basis from somebody saying, I've got the next best thing in SEO. I've got the next best thing in PPC. Hire me. How do we know we're getting somebody good to come and help us?
Yeah, a lot of things we tell clients, and I talk about this on Reddit a lot, is, interview a couple of their past, clients or customers, both current and maybe ones who don't work with them anymore, and just find out what they were like to work with, and did they have a good experience, especially if it's someone that's not working with the person that you want to hire, find out why, was the person really bad, were they really amazing, and then beyond that, just go with your gut. If the person doesn't ask you questions about what your goal is, how much revenue you want to make that year, they don't try to understand your business a lot deeper, I probably wouldn't hire them. And then in terms of copy, great copy for a lot of service-based businesses are customer testimonials or customer reviews. So if you've got lots of customers leaving you reviews on, Google reviews or other sites, going through that, finding one that you think speaks volumes about your business, and then email on that person or reach out to that person and say, hey, I read your customer review. It was really great. Could we use this copy in an ad on Facebook, right? And then you could say, 4-star review from, Jenny from New York, and then you put copy or a paragraph with the review in the Facebook ad, and you've got yourself an ad. You just have to figure out what your image is. So you can definitely do DIY your copy if you just go through customer reviews and customers say you can use their copy in an ad.
All right, Duane, my friend, take some risk. What a great opportunity for us to recognize the importance of stepping outside of our comfort zone. It is now time for us to shift gears a little bit and talk about learning from leaders. A few questions where we find out a little bit more about you. Are you ready?
Sure. Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, let's jump in. The first question that we have for you is the book currently on your Kindle or bedside table. What are you reading these days?
A book called Radical Candor. It's a book all about how to give feedback and not let things fester. Sometimes in companies or in teams, people won't give what might be construed as harsh or mean feedback because they don't want to ruffle any feathers. So it's a book about how to just give better feedback. All
right. Our second question then is your leadership superpower.
I've probably said this a few times, but I think empathy, being able to understand other people and other cultures is super valuable. So that's my superpower because I think a lot of leadership could be better at understanding other people, especially as you get up in an organization. Remember what it's like to just be a junior person or an intern or a manager if you're a VP. We often sometimes forget what it was like to be at that position when we were higher up. So empathy would be my superpower.
How about a motivational quote, philosophy, or mantra that you live by?
I don't think Abraham Lincoln actually said this, and he probably didn't say it. But there's the idea, the best time to plant a tree, is yesterday, and the next best time is today. And so I kind of live by that in life in the sense that I'm always trying to just take care of things today versus putting them off. Procrastination is super easy, so I try not to procrastinate on things.
And one of the ways that we talk about that type of philosophy or that type of idea on the podcast is immediate, imperfect action beats inaction every day. So go ahead and step forward. Go ahead and move towards the direction of your goals, towards what you're trying to create. Move in that direction today, even if it's imperfect, because imperfect, immediate action will always be inaction when you look down the road. So we love that idea, that philosophy. Our final question then is the book that you most often recommend or refer to friends, family, and colleagues.
That's a good question. I definitely recommended Radical Candor a lot in the last year because it's probably one of the better books I read in the last year. But the other book I really like, I think the last name is pronounced McCord, so it's Patty McCord. She wrote a book called Powerful. She was the head of marketing at Netflix. And so I thought that was a really interesting book in terms of how she managed, HR and people operations as the company grew. And, if you're going to get down the book to one sentence, basically how to treat adults like adults and try to remove as much red tape as possible.
Well, very cool. Sounds like something we definitely need to pick up. Duane, it's been great to have you on the show. Before we let you go, how about a little last bit of advice? And then how can we find out more about you and take some risk?
Totally. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, so Duane Brown on Twitter is one way to reach out to me. Or you can just go to takesomerisk.com, check out our website. We've got a form on there, an email, and a chat app. And I guess my last quote for people is, sometimes things are super scary, but you just have to trust yourself and jump out that plane and take the risk and try it out. Most things you want to try are not final. They're not life or death. If you try something that doesn't work out, that's okay. You can always go back and change your mind later. But if you don't try, you won't know where you're going to go.
You heard it from Duane. We need to jump out of a plane from a guy who hasn't jumped out of the airplane. But no, I absolutely agree with you. We do have to take some risk. We need to move in that direction of uncomfortability because that is where we get to the point of figuring out what is important to us, and we start to identify, what's really working. And once we figure that out, well, then we're off to the races. Duane, it's been wonderful having you on the podcast. Thank you for coming on today and being this week's Modern Leadership guest expert.
Cool. Thanks, Jay, for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, my friends, and a big thank you to Duane for coming on the podcast today, talking to us a little bit about taking some risk. As you know, we need to step outside of our comfort zone. We need to take risk a little bit in our business and our career and professional development. We need to step into uncomfortability so that we can progress, so that we can learn. And guess what? It's all figure outable. So step into that desire, dream that you have. Go after that huge project, whatever it may be for you. Step into the risk and succeed. Of course, we also talked about marketing. As you know, everybody is in marketing. No matter what role you play in your company, you are in marketing. Marketing and sales is an important component of every job. Customer service is really marketing. Production is really marketing. All of this is so important to the growth of our business. Of course, everything that we talked about in this episode of the podcast can be found at jakeacarlson.com/ML169, episode 169. And until next week, I want to wish you the very best of days, an even better life, and of course, everything is figure outable. Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.